I love a good storm. You know, the downpour of rain, the thunder, the lightning, the roaring wind, the blizzard of snow. I actually mean I love watching storms from inside my safe, warm, dry house. I suppose if I were homeless, or if I lived in Texas and was battered by Harvey, Florida, battered by Irma, Puerto Rico, battered by Maria, or last night, Mississippi, battered by Nate, and I lost my home, I wouldn't enjoy the storms quite as much, being outside, being exposed. Isn't that what the storms of life feel like to us? Being homeless in the storm, cold, miserable, exposed, vulnerable. Perhaps this morning you are going through one of the storms of life right now. We hate those kinds of storms, don't we? The storm of need, the storm of loss, the storm of opposition or depression. Elijah, the stormy prophet of the Old Testament, comes in like a storm, predicts some storms, weathers those storms, and then he goes out in a whirlwind. And the storms that Elijah faces and weathers can help us prepare for the storms of life and weather them too. Elijah appears out of nowhere in 1 Kings chapter 17, and he immediately faces the storm of need. There's a drought, a famine in the land, and nothing to drink or eat for 3.5 years. Elijah will not just be hungry and not himself like in a Snickers commercial. No, he will literally be starving and dying. That's the risk for him and his country. So what can we learn from him about weathering the storm of need? A few years ago, I found myself in a storm of need. Things had conspired so that I had 2 boys in college. That's enough to bankrupt you. And then the air conditioner went, the heater went, and the water heater went all in 1 year. All had to be replaced. And so I was in dire need, and I needed $1,100 immediately. I told the Lord, Lord, I need $1,100 today. I don't want to ask anyone. I don't want to run up credit cards. I need $1,100 today. Now, I know for most of you, you got that in your pocket. But for me, that was a real storm. And I wondered, how in the world am I going to make it to tomorrow? How do we weather the storm of need? What can we learn from Elijah? In 1 Kings chapter 17, beginning in verse 1. Join me, please. And Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead said to Ahab the king, As the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, except at my word. Boom, there he is, like a storm coming out of nowhere. That's how Elijah shows up without warning. His name means, my God is Jehovah. El, God, Yah, Yahweh. He is a Tishbite, not a tick-bite. No, he doesn't have Lyme's disease. It means he's from Tishbe, which is in Gad on the east side of the Jordan. He's the least quoted, but the most praised prophet of the Old Testament in the New Testament. And this abrupt introduction to him is so characteristic of this man of action in a few words. So the stormy man of action marches right into the throne room of the king. And he says, As the Lord lives, guess what? News break. God's not dead. Before whom I stand. This man is unafraid to stand before the king because he stands before God every morning. How about you? And then of all things, Elijah puts on his meteorologist hat and gives the king his weather forecast. Here is your 3-year forecast for the greater Palestine area. A high-pressure system will be sweeping in from the west and settling over the area that will bring warm, dry weather and 0% chance of rain for the next 3 years. The forecast for Monday is sunny, and Tuesday is sunny, and Wednesday is sunny, and October is sunny, and 2017 and 2018 and 2019 is sunny and dry. Water rationing is in order. This is not just polite conversation. We love to talk about the weather, right? How about this weather? Sure is dry. Sure could use some rain, right? It's not that. And this is not some short-term prediction from a weatherman who's right about 50% of the time. This is a long-term promise or threat from a prophet in the name of God of a full-blown disaster. For us, the weather is maybe a nuisance. Can't get to work because of a half an inch of snow. Or maybe the rain will ruin our plans. We're talking here about not a nuisance, but an economy collapsing, life-threatening drought and famine. 3 years? People's mouths in the throne room are hanging open. Nobody says a word, including the king. And Elijah walks out untouched and in trouble. Most weathermen get in trouble when they get the forecast wrong. Oh, so where's the snow? Or, why didn't you warn us about the snow? But Elijah is the one weatherman who will be in trouble when he gets it right. Because first, the king will want to kill him. And second, because he himself is going to have to go through the same drought as everybody else. Elijah is not only facing a storm of controversy, but he's going to face a storm of need. What is he going to eat? What is he going to drink? What's Elijah to do? Where does he go? Verse 2. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Get away from here, and turn eastward, and hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. Where's he to go? For 3 years? Well, the Lord says, get out of here. That's good. The Lord, before whom Elijah stands, get out of here, not a bad idea. He's going to be unpopular, maybe thrown in prison, if not killed. He'd see the suffering of all the people and be tempted to feel sorry for them even before their repentance. Maybe they would look to him instead of looking to God. So God says, go to the brook Cherith, about 35 miles southeast. Why? Well, the brook's where the water is, right? Verse 4, It shall be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. Ravens? I just moved from Baltimore, which is Ravens country. They named their football team for these ugly birds. I need to remind you that the raven is the very first bird mentioned in the Bible. That's the first bird that Noah let out of the ark to see if there's dry ground. You know, the one that didn't come back. I also need to tell you that the raven is an unclean bird to the Jews, like pork, because they're scavengers. They live on roadkill. So Elijah hears that he's going to be eating food brought to him by ravens. You know what he's going to have twice a day for 3 years? Roadkill. Oh, good. Roadkill for breakfast. Roadkill for dinner. And I'm sure he's not too excited about that. Maybe he's suggesting to the Lord, how about that manna program you had with the children of Israel in the wilderness for 40 years? I would gladly take that, or monkey bread, or fried chicken, anything. But the Lord says no. So Elijah went and did according to the word of the Lord. He went and stayed by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. And sure enough, verse 6, the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Okay, he drank from the brook, fresh water. But the ravens brought him bread and meat. We know where they got the meat, roadkill. Where did they get the bread? People's garbage? Oh, Elijah must be licking his chops for this menu. I suppose after a while he got hungry enough to eat it and get used to it. Stop wondering where it came from and how much raven slobber was on it. Do you think he even realized every day what a miracle this was? Ravens are not particularly generous with their food. They don't share with each other, let alone us. You ever heard the term ravenous? The root word is raven. Ravenous comes from ravens. But verse 7, it happened after a while that the brook dried up because there'd been no rain in the land. Guess what? When droughts come, when the rain doesn't come, brooks dry up. And no one should be surprised, least of all Elijah, because he's the one who not only predicted it, James chapter 5 tells us that he prayed for it. So the brook dries up. What are we supposed to learn at the drying brook? What can we take away from this story that will help us today when we face the storm of need in our lives? When hard times come, like they are for Elijah here, and we're struggling to make ends meet, when we've lost our income and we can't pay the rent, we're afraid of losing the house. First, at the drying brook, we learn that in need, we always have to go somewhere. God says to him, get away from here and turn eastward. Kind of the opposite of our saying, go west, young man. Now, you don't always have to go east, but I think it's safe to say we always have to go somewhere. In this case, eastward means to the brook Cherith, where there was, water. God says, I want you to go somewhere where there's water. I don't want you to just sit there and pray and then sit and wait for me to dump water on you from heaven. God loves to meet our needs. Sometimes meeting our needs means going somewhere else where our needs are ready to be met. Today we might say, go where the jobs are. You see, there's a balance taught to us in Scripture. Jesus taught us to pray in the Sermon on the Mount. Give us this day our daily bread. But do we pray and then look up to heaven and wait for it to drop it down on us from the sky? No, actually, we are supposed to get up, go out, plant it, water it, harvest it, grind it, bake it, or if we're fortunate, we can just go out and buy it. But then we're supposed to thank Him for it, because He provides. You see, there was a drought, so God quite naturally told Elijah to go where there is water to drink. God didn't need to miraculously make more when there was already some there. You see, this teaches us an important lesson. God normally uses natural means. We often pray for a miracle when, with a little effort on our part, we might see the trick done. And I don't think God likes doing miracles when He's already provided somewhere else. As a matter of fact, if God did miracles every time we asked, they would no longer be out of the ordinary, but they'd be routine. By definition, no longer miracles. Are you thirsty? Go where there is water. Need money? Get a job. Get the training or skills you need and put in a lot of applications, because, newsflash, 100% of the jobs you don't apply for don't provide a paycheck. It's a simple principle, really, isn't it? There was a drought, and Elijah needed water, so God told him to go to the brook Cherith. We all have basic needs: water, food, clothing, shelter. And God has already provided our needs, but sometimes we've got to go somewhere else to get them. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says God feeds the birds of the air. And He does, doesn't He? But does He drop it down out of the sky at them? No, they've got to go out and get it. And long ago, God had cut the brook Cherith into the Holy Land, knowing full well that at this very moment Elijah would need it. So God said, go there. There's water. Elijah had to get up and go. And God has provided for you as well. But maybe you need to get up and go somewhere and do something. Second lesson we learn at the drying brook is that indeed we often have to rely on others. Now, thankfully, most of us don't have to rely on birds like ravens, or in my case, the eagles, for life. But we do often have to rely on other humans, don't we? We come into this world as helpless babies, totally relying on our parents for everything. And this is trading for life. We have to rely on others to build our homes. Most of us. I don't want to live in a home that I built. I have to rely on others for food, because if we had to rely on my green thumb for family for the food, we'd starve. Most of us need to rely on others to fix the things that break in our home. And if you are handy enough to fix it, good for you. But I guess that when you break and you're not healthy anymore, you've got to rely on somebody else to fix your body. All of this reliance on one another should keep us humble and make us interdependent and grateful. And it should be training for us to rely on God. Notice they came twice a day, morning and evening. They didn't drop off a crate that would last him a month. Then he would be able to imagine that he was set. He had to rely on the ravens to return that night, and then again the next day. What if they don't show up? You see, we are taught to pray in the Sermon on the Mount for our daily bread. We don't like to rely on anyone or anything. We want security. We don't want daily bread. We want weekly bread. Better yet, we want monthly or yearly bread. We want enough so we don't have to rely on others or on God for today or tomorrow. And most of us have a cupboard full, a freezer full, which makes it pretty difficult for us today to even pray this prayer sincerely. Lord, give us this day our daily bread. We've got weeks or months stored up. It makes it difficult for us to really have to rely on God. A few years ago, I had the privilege of visiting a Baltimore homeless shelter for families who were homeless. My daughter was volunteering there, doing daycare for these children whose family was in crisis. And visiting and seeing these families hurt my heart, to see others who had no place to stay, no food to eat, especially those children in that kind of need. Is that what it takes to remind me what I am, even in my comfort and security? Totally relying on others, totally relying on God. Well, you and I have to go through this kind of storm like Elijah does here to remind us that we are dependent on Him. The third lesson that we learn at the drying brook is, in need, we never should trust the means. Remember, the brook dried up. This is the weather that the weatherman Elijah has predicted. He should not be surprised. But I'm sure that, like most of us, Elijah became used to his supply. I mean, I need water to live, but God has filled our planet with it. 3/4 of the earth is covered with it. It comes down out of the sky for free like it did yesterday. It runs freely down the Petey River and even in our homes. Pretty easy to take it for granted, isn't it? We just turn on the faucet and there it is, in abundance. It's always easy to assume that we have an endless supply until the storm comes and we clean the shelves of all the bottled water. And that reminds us to never trust the means. Yes, God meets our needs, but we are not to trust the supply. We are to trust the supplier. Don't we say it? You never appreciate anything until it's gone. Here's our thought for the day. What if I woke up tomorrow with only the things I thank God for today? Ouch. What if you woke up tomorrow with only the things you thank God for today? Have you thanked God enough? Have you thanked God for your family, for your spouse, for your children, for your parents? Have you thanked God for water? Do you know there are millions of people on the earth today who don't take clean drinking water for granted? Will it take a storm to get us to appreciate what we have? So the brook dried up. What do we do now, Elijah? Look at verse 8. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. I want you to go 100 miles northwest into enemy territory, the coast of the Mediterranean, but you can't drink seawater. This is modern-day Lebanon. Yeah, the king, the enraged king of Israel, is never going to look there. But God says, I've got you covered. Can't drink water? I've commanded, verse 9, a widow there to provide for you. Oh, great. From ravens to a poor, broke widow. To me, this is a step down from the ravens, isn't it? I mean, we hate to ask for charity, but it's even worse if you've got to ask a homeless person for a handout. We'll discover this will be for her benefit as much as it is for him. Verse 10. So he arose and went to Zarephath. He was out of options, wasn't he? And when he came to the gate of the city, indeed a widow was there gathering sticks. How did he know she was a widow? She had a sign on. Maybe she was wearing black. Maybe it was her gathering sticks. Anyway, he called to her and said, Please bring me a little water in a cup that I may drink. Does this remind any of you of Jesus asking a woman at the well in Samaria for a drink? Or maybe Abraham's servant asking Rebekah for a drink in Genesis? Well, as she was going to get it, remember hospitality was a sacred duty then, he called to her and said, Oh, one more thing, kind of Columbo-like. Please bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. She's willing to go. She's got a lot of character. But now her character is going to be tested. Elijah asked her to bring some bread. Now Elijah got to hand it to him. His mother taught him right. He had manners. He said, Please. But this is asking much, especially from her. Times were already hard enough for her. But now he's asking this poor woman to feed him. Verse 12. She said, As the Lord your God lives. How does she know he's Jewish? How does she know he's a Yahweh worshiper? How does she even know Yahweh's covenant name? As the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread, Here's the original Mother Hubbard. Her cupboard is bare. She has nothing. She doesn't live in a shoe, but her cupboard was bare. I do not have bread, only a handful of flour in a bin, and a little oil in a jar. And see, if she's not pitiful enough already, I'm gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. Wow, here is a real Debbie Downer. Womp womp. But Elijah knows this is the one. She's the widow. And wait a minute, this is the one? She can't even provide for herself. How is she going to provide for me for 3.5 years? Verse 13, Elijah said to her, do not fear. Go and do as I have said, but make me a small cake from it first, and bring it to me. You mean feed me first? Yeah, here's why. Afterward, make some for yourself and your son. She might as well take a chance, right? This is her last meal before she dies in her mind, so she's got nothing to lose. So, she tries it, because here's the promise, verse 14. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, the bin of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain on the earth. Quite a promise, isn't it? God will take care of you if you take care of his prophet. Now, I don't know if it sounds eerily like a televangelist to you, but this just is like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. Ever hear those guys on radio or TV telling widows to send them, the televangelists, the rich televangelists, their seed money so God might bless them, the widows? And I kind of think she ought to tell Elijah, like I want to tell those prophets, wait a minute, if you really believe the stuff you're dealing out, then why don't you trust God? You're the man of faith to meet your needs. Or if you really believe this seed money stuff, why don't you send money to all the widows so God can bless you? But she does it. In spite of the Titanic theology, whatever happened to women and children first, she feeds him first. Verse 15. She went away and did according to the word of Elijah. And she and he and her household ate for many days. Wow. There are a lot of skeptics out there who doubt every miracle in the Bible, and they doubt this one, the whole bin that never ran out. So they say that really what this was just a touching scene where her need and her generosity inspired others to share with her. So for 3.5 years, other people met her needs. Well, that's the way God does it quite often, but that's not what happened here. Remember, this is the same God who can feed 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Verse 16, the bin of flour was not used up, nor did the jar of oil run dry, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Elijah. Unlike the drying brook that ran out of water, this empty cupboard never did run out. When we face the storm of need in our lives, what do we learn from Elijah and this empty cupboard? First, at the empty cupboard, we learn that just like at the dry brook, in need, we always need to do something. God said, get up and go to Zarephath. This lesson is so important that God goes to the trouble of teaching it to us twice. The brook dries up. Guess what? We usually do. The resources run out. So what do? Sit and feel sorry for ourselves? Curl up in a ball and die? No, pray. But then just sit and pray and wait for God to do something? No, get up and do something yourself. The widow will provide for you, but she's not coming 100 miles to where you are. You've got to go to her. So do we need to pray in the storm of need? Of course we do. But not for God to do something. We need to ask God for something to do. And then do it. The second lesson we learn at the empty cupboard is that in need we often have to ask, take the first step. Elijah went 100 miles, but the widow didn't run up to him and say, there you are, I've been waiting for you. Would you like some food? No, he had to ask. And for us, we usually have to ask. James says we have not because we ask not, especially men. We have to ask for a job. We have to take the initiative, go apply, go knock on doors, ask for a chance. Let me be honest with you for a moment. This is a particular weak spot for me. I'm extremely proud and self-sufficient. I don't ask for anything from anyone. I don't want to ask for directions, let alone a favor, let alone a sacrifice. And God, with a sense of humor, made me a preacher who has to take an offering every week of my life. Now normally, most of us don't have to ask, but then the storm comes, and we find ourselves at the end of our rope, and we're desperate and we have no choice. So we have to ask. I have to ask for you to support our radio program. I have to ask for you to support your church. Oh, asking is humbling, but God gives grace to the humble. So when the storm comes, we can't be too proud or too ashamed to ask. We have not because we ask not. Third, at the empty cupboard, we learn that in need, we must focus on what we have. You remember the widow when he said, bring me something? She said, I don't have anything. She focused on what she didn't have. It was so easy for us to focus on what we don't have, what others have that we don't. Rather than things that we have, oftentimes the things we have that others don't. Why did she say, I don't have bread? Instead of saying, I have flour and oil. Elijah might have said, oh, you do have something. Why didn't you say so? She says, but my cupboard is empty. The original Mother Hubbard. I don't have anything. Well, almost nothing. I'm almost out. Most of us would rather have full cupboards, but then we wouldn't learn to trust God. So can I ask you, are you a glass half full type of person or a glass half empty type of person? The optimist or the pessimist? I was honest with you about my problems with the last one. How about if I have equal time this time and share with you one of my relative strengths? I am the eternal optimist. I'm not a half full guy. I'm a full glass guy. I'm the guy who sees a silver lining on every cloud, who sees a daisy in every field of cow patties. When I talk to other pastors and they tell me about all their problems and their deacons and their church, and they go on and on about how horrible it is, and they hear about my church, they're jealous of me. Because all I tell them is about how wonderful my church is and how wonderful my people are. Usually they say, boy, I'd love to trade places. You know what I know? You'd be miserable in my church too. And although I wouldn't like your church as much as mine, I'm sure I'd be happy and I'd be bragging on your church just like I brag on mine, because I'm looking at the brighter side. I'm thankful for what I have, not only the things I don't have. You know what? That's important in life. That's important in your marriage. It's important in your job. Are you thankful for what you have? Do you focus on what you have? We learned one thing really important in Philippians. We get to choose our life because we get to choose our attitude, because we get to choose what we focus on. What do you focus on? What you have or what you don't have? Look at what you have. What do you have in your hand? God says. God, what can you and I make with this? As long as it's you and God, you can make a lot with it. The fourth lesson we learn at the empty cupboard is, in need, we must still think of others. Elijah is new to the storm. He was fine until he correctly predicted the drought. She was already in trouble before the drought came along and made it worse. And in her misery, it's easy to see her feeling sorry for herself as she makes her last meal to go curl up in a ball and die. But what is absolutely the best medicine for feeling sorry for yourself in depression? Isn't it thinking of others? Are you in need? Maybe you don't have much to give, but you could volunteer your time and come and help serve at the food pantry on Saturday, where 100 people in need come and get groceries. Maybe you can see someone a little less fortunate than yourself and make you feel rich, not only by helping someone else, but making you rich by having a chance to make a difference in someone's life, maybe even telling them about Jesus. Are you in need? Don't have enough to tithe? 10% of 100,000 is a larger amount, but it's not nearly as great a sacrifice as 10% of 15,000. God says, never mind, just put me first and see if I don't open up the windows of heaven with a blessing that'll just bowl you over. Giving, yes, even in the storm. The fifth and final lesson at the empty cupboard is, indeed, we are never without God's supply. Here's the miracle in the story. The miracle we want. The jar of oil that never runs dry. The bin of flour that's never used up. Don't you want that kind of miracle in your house? The box of cereal in the cupboard that never gets empty, so the kids always have something. The $100 at the bank account that never runs out, so checks never bounce. God can still do that, but He usually doesn't. Usually we have to pray and then get up and go out and ask and work and scrimp and save and work some more. But in the end, however God chooses to supply, He always does, doesn't He? Look back. Has He always met your need? He always does, doesn't He? When we look forward, it's easy to forget that He's always taken care of our needs in the past. But He never has forsaken us. Actually, David tells us in Psalm 37:25, I have been young, and now I'm old. Can I get an amen? Yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread. None of us want to see our children begging. We'll do anything to provide for their needs, work and sacrifice, and do without ourselves if we have to. David reminds us that we are His children, and He doesn't want to see us beg. He'll never forsake us. We learned 2 weeks ago in Philippians 4:19, my God will supply every need of yours, not according to our need, but according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus. He does, doesn't He? And isn't that great? Doesn't feel so great in the storm of need, though. When you're down to your last dollar, facing eviction or bankruptcy, when you're wondering where the money will come from, when you're at the drying brook or the empty cupboard, what do? You feel like that homeless person out in the storm, miserable, vulnerable, exposed? So I needed $1,100, and I needed it that day. What did I do? I prayed. I said, God, I need $1,100 today. You know what God told me to do? Get up and go somewhere. Not go get another job. I already had 2. Told me to get up and go to the mailbox. I laughed. Now, God doesn't speak to me in an audible voice. Most of us. He doesn't do that, right? But when I said, Lord, I need $1,100, it was just clear to me I was supposed to go to my mailbox. And I just said, Lord, I'm supposed to argue with the Lord, but I said, Lord, there's nothing in there but more bills. Not unexpected bills, but there's bills there. Nobody owes me any money. I'm not expecting any money. Certainly not $1,100. I'm not going to go make a fool of myself. Don't tell God what you're not going to do. So I went to the mailbox, and there was a stack of mail, and yes, there were many bills. But on the top, there was an envelope. You know those ones with little windows that look like there's a check in there, but it's never a check. It's some solicitation, some loan. You sign the back of it, and they're going to charge you exorbitant rates, or maybe it's a 3-cent refund from your credit card. I said, oh, come on, Lord, don't jerk me around. There was a check in the top envelope of this stack. So I started to walk back in, and I prayed, Lord, I need $1,100 today. Don't let this be for $20. I opened it up, and there was a check. It was a real check. It was for $1,102.57. It was from my mortgage company. My mortgage company's not in the habit of sending me money. They ask for money every month. And then I read the letter. I had been overpaying on the escrow for my taxes for a year. God didn't drop $1,100 out of the sky on me. God collected $1,100 over 12 months from me, knowing full well that on that day I would need it. God said, you got to get up and go somewhere. You got to do something. I got to work. I had to pay my mortgage and overpay my taxes for a year. And then God said, okay, there it is. And what was He doing? He was reminding me, I got it handled. Don't sweat it. I will not forsake you. I know what you need before you are born. I know what you need, and I can handle it. God can handle your need. It's not too big for Him. It's not a surprise. So what can you do? Pray, yes. For God to do something, yes. But are you open for God to tell you to do something, to go somewhere, to rely on others, to rely on Him? Take the first step. Maybe ask. Focus on what you have. And still think of others. Elijah the weatherman tells us a storm is coming. But Jesus is the one who will go through the storm with you. And Jesus looks at you and asks you, what do you have in your hand? What do you have? Don't tell Him nothing. Tell Him what you have. What can you do with what you have? God tells you to do something. Do right. Just leave the consequences to God. And He will go with you. Jesus is the one who says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the storm of need, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Jesus is with you, and He will help you weather the storm of need. Let's pray. Lord, thank You for Your care for us. Your supply is never ending. Lord, sometimes we have to sweat it, but we never have to sweat it if we are your child. Lord, I pray that today, if there's one here who's not your child, that today they would accept by faith your gift of salvation as it is freely offered through Jesus Christ. I pray that today they would come in simple faith to the foot of the cross and say, Lord, I know I'm a sinner. I know I can't save myself. I know I deserve death and hell for my sin against you. But I thank you for loving me and sending Jesus to die on the cross for my sins. The best way I know how, I accept this gift by faith and ask you to save me for Jesus' sake. God still got to pray that prayer this morning, or you did what you needed to. Can I pray for you? Would you meet me at the door and say, Pastor, I prayed that prayer this morning, or I need to pray that prayer. I'd love to know that I'm God's child. Are you God's child, or are you going through a storm today? I'm sure most of us are going through one sort of storm or another. You this morning need to learn to trust God. Not trust God and do it all for you, but trust God and then get up and do what he tells you to do. Lord, as your children, teach us that you love us more than we could possibly love our children, and that you will supply our need. Lord, we do pray humbly today with a new perspective. Lord, give us this day our daily bread. We try and make plans. We try and set aside so that we can be secure. But Lord, help us to realize that you're our only security. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Our invitation this morning is actually special music. I'd like to play for you what I hope becomes your new favorite song. Graham Kendrick, he wrote Shine, Jesus, Shine. He's a British songwriter, and he had a friend whose favorite saying was, for this I have Jesus. Whenever anything would go wrong in his life, he'd say, that's okay. For this I have Jesus. So Graham Kendrick sat down and wrote this song. I'd like to teach it to you. Maybe you can learn it and sing it some this week. theology dismisses the prayers.
Father,